Welcome to CBS Sports HQ. I am Jenny Dell, and today is Tuesday, February 18th. The NFL franchise tag window is open. So what does that mean? Well, over the next 2 weeks, NFL teams will reserve the right to slap one of their key free agents with a franchise tag. This allows the organization to retain their pending free agents on a one-year contract, or at least until the two parties can agree to a long-term extension. Now, to break down the players that may be tagged, let us hand it over to our Chris Hassel and Kyle Long.
Yes, thank you, Jenny.
You're so welcome.
We have an article at CBSSports.com that lists one tag candidate from each team. If that team has a tag candidate, there's a bunch of teams that we don't think have any. We're going to discuss the teams that might. And we'll start with Pete Prisco doing a ranking of the top 100 potential free agents. And at the very top was Sam Darnold of the Minnesota Vikings. What a precarious situation this is. Kyle, we had Bryant McFadden on yesterday. He suggested the Vikings tag him and then trade him and get something for him.
Yeah, I think it's a smart thing to do. What you're not going to do is sign this guy to a huge contract, but you got J.J. McCarthy waiting in the wings. Obviously, he turned back into a pumpkin at the end of the year, that Sam Darnold. We were expecting him. We're going to see how high that number got in terms of his contract, but obviously it came down to earth a little bit. Sam Darnold and the Minnesota Vikings. Smart move would be to tag him, for sure. And B-Mac saying that, it holds true with what I'm thinking here. You've got the rookie who's going to be in his second year. And you have some stability there with the backup, or if you want to deal him for some compensatory picks or whatever the deal may be, Sam Darnold, you probably got to tag him. You're not going to pay him a huge number.
As Pete Prisco says, you are who you are, and Sam Darnold turned into
Prisco
Sam Darnold
says a
the
lot.
pumpkin.
He says a lot.
In the postseason. Let's move to the AFC North, and the Baltimore Ravens is where we're going to start things here. We'll get to the Bengals as well, but a couple of offensive linemen are in Pete Prisco's top 5 free agents, and Ronnie Staley is one of those for the Ravens. And Kyle, they've used a tag each of the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, Ronnie Stanley, really good football player when he's on the field. Obviously, he's at the age now, he's into his 30s, where you can see a guy go in one of 2 ways. Obviously, we've seen some offensive linemen play till they're 38, 39, 40 years old. We're going to find out about Ronnie Stanley, what the Ravens really think. But I think you don't want to upset the apple cart there in Baltimore, because you got a great thing going offensively. Left tackle, such a key position. And for Lamar Jackson, it's the only left tackle he's really known in Baltimore. You got to find a way to retain this guy. And I know the number's about $25 million to franchise an offensive lineman, whether it's a center, guard, or tackle. And in my opinion, Ronnie Stanley at $25 million makes sense.
Mentioned the Ravens have used tags each of the last couple of years. There are guys that might be tagged this year who have already been tagged. Chris Godwin's been tagged twice by the Buccaneers. How about T. Higgins, who's been tagged by the Cincinnati Bengals? And they're in a really tough spot, because they need to pay Trey Hendrickson, they need to pay Jamar Chase, and you need to keep Joe Burrow happy with another weapon of his in T. Higgins.
Yeah, a lot of mouths to feed there, but I think that one of the most important ones, obviously, is T. Higgins. And this offense, the explosive nature of it is in due part to the fact that they've got 2 guys who are real winners there with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Look, I think that Joe Burrow, if you were to ask him, he'd say lock him up. Everybody in that building would want T. Higgins to be in those Tiger stripes next year. I think it's a move that they have to make. They've got to find a way to get him, and obviously you mentioned Hendrickson as well. They've got a lot of decisions to make, but T. Higgins, in my opinion, it keeps your strengths, and that's the offensive side of the football with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase.
And reportedly the Bengals are going to try to keep all 3. We'll see if they can make that actually happen. Speaking of 3, the Philadelphia Eagles with 3 potential free agents in Prisco's top 10, all of them on the front 7 on defense: Sweat, Williams, and Bond. And Bond's who we're going to focus on. That's who Tyler Sullivan pointed out as the logical tagging candidate here. But Kyle, what makes it so difficult with Bond being a middle linebacker?
Well, here's what makes it difficult. Zach Bond obviously was a guy who was a rusher in New Orleans. He came to Philadelphia under Vic Fangio's tutelage. They moved him off the ball to the middle of the field. He was exceptional. In my opinion, if he had a flashier name, he would have been a DPOY candidate. a real one. But these linebackers, whether they're in the middle of the field or they're that linebacker that's the edge rusher, they get paid the same in this franchise tag. So the number's really bloated for a second-level off-ball linebacker. But with what he meant to that defense, I think it's imperative that they find a way to get this guy signed. And whether it's through the franchise tag or getting him a new deal, Zach Bond's the guy that you have to keep in Philadelphia.
You would say he's the most important of those three guys in the top 10 with Sweat and Williams as well?
Josh Sweat and Milton Williams, obviously great players. Milton Williams deserves a raise. He deserves everything that's going to be coming towards him. But if you let a guy like that walk and you retain a guy like Zach Bond, it keeps the strength of that defense strong. I mean, you've still got Jalen Carter on the inside. Josh Sweat, the other name that you mentioned, he had a great Super Bowl and playoff run. But I think Zach Bond is a piece that keeps that defense together. All
right, let's move to the AFC East, and we'll hit on the Miami Dolphins. Cornerback Javon Holland did not have a pick this past season, didn't produce like he had in the past. And it's a tough situation for Miami because they're $5 million over the cap right now.
Yeah, it's an expensive sport. Eh? You look around this league, and some people are better at dealing with the dollars and cents of it than others. And I hope for Javon Holland, an Oregon Duck, that he gets an opportunity to retain his locker there in Miami. A great player. Obviously, the production wasn't what they wanted to see, but that's a talented young player, and they don't just grow on trees. Talented young players. So you get that guy. I think he's still in his early 20s. Keep him on the roster. You have an opportunity to build that thing with Javon Holland.
All right, so have you said not bring anybody back yet?
You know what? I love all the players.
Bring them all back. Hell, bring me back.
I said get rid of Sam Darnold. You're not going to start Sam Darnold, so figure out what you're going to do with Sam Darnold, right? For sure.
Sure. Sign, or excuse me, tag.
Zach Bond may be too expensive to franchise tag. T. Higgins, a no-brainer in my opinion. Ronnie Stanley, if I'm the trainer, I have some insider information on what his future looks like. But hey, I don't have a crystal ball. I just have a set of eyes.
Let's get to the NFC West, Kyle, and use your eyes here. Alaric Jackson of the Rams, and they've already made some waves telling Cooper Kupp he's going to be traded. There's questions about Matt Stafford's future, and is he happy? What should the Rams do?
I think that at $25 million, a young tackle like this, and Alaric Jackson, who has been, at the left tackle spot for the Rams, he's been great, and I think you have to find a way to keep him. If there's going to be a lot of change at the skill positions, potentially at the quarterback position in Los Angeles, one thing you need to have is that building block, and with Alaric Jackson at the left tackle position, you have that. You don't even have to think about what's going on that side of the ball.
All right, let's move to the Kansas City Chiefs. Interesting case here. You've got one thing that needs to be revamped. It's the offensive line, but you do have an offensive lineman in Trey Smith that can help fill one of those holes. Is this a guy that you just absolutely have to keep because of the weakness on that O-line?
I hope he ends up in Chicago, plays for the Bears.
Selfishly, me too.
I want him to block for Caleb Williams and that bunch there in Chicago. But for Kansas City, it's just too much money. I mean, they're in a spot where they have some needs that need to be addressed. And unfortunately, it's going to be a cap casualty, as it were, and Trey Smith will probably end up somewhere else. $25 million.
Does that make it even more difficult, though, for the Chiefs on that offensive line, the thing that they really need to help Patrick Mahomes out with?
100% it's difficult, but they're going to probably move Joe Thuney back inside to play the position where he's most comfortable at, the left guard position, and they're going to have to develop one of those two young guys at the tackle position, whether it's Wanye Morris or Sua Maduia, who both had an opportunity to get their feet wet in this football season that we just played.
None of the other AFC West teams have tag candidates, according to Tyler Sullivan at CBSSports.com. As we move to the AFC South, and the Texans on top. They haven't used a tag since Jadeveon Clowney back in 2019.
And they won't.
You don't think so with Stephon Diggs? He's coming off an ACL.
They can't. I mean, you can't do that right now with Stephon Diggs, particularly with the injury situation. He's a guy that I feel like can help another team in a key role, like have that vet receiver in the room. I look at a team like Baltimore, and I could totally see Stephon Diggs wearing that Ravens helmet and going to help out Lamar Jackson.
What about the Chiefs? I mean, they're always seeming to get these kind of superstars on the tail end of their career.
I could see that as well. But like we said, where the Chiefs are going to invest in is that wall, that line of scrimmage, because we all just watched the Super Bowl and what happened there to Patrick Mahomes, and without protection, they can even make Patrick Mahomes look human.
All right, we have that full article at CBSSports.com going through each and every team and whether or not they have a candidate or not. Didn't hit the NFC South because there are no candidates there for tagging, even though you had a couple of teams use a tag last year, including the Panthers on Brian Burns before then sending him off. Kyle, what's on the latest pushing the pile?
Pushing the pile today. We ranked top Super Bowl teams, Super Bowl champions of all time, or since 2000. We talked about free agency. We talked about trade candidates, things of that nature. A lot of fan fiction going on today. It was fun.
Will Pete be on this week?
Pete, not going to be on this week. We didn't power rank anything.
Yeah, that's true. That's all he can do. He can power rank and he can put a list together. That's about it.
And make a mean antipasti.
Yeah, Italian.
Coming up next, we're keeping it with the NFL. Every team looking to improve this offseason. We're going to be looking at the AFC East. What could the Bills add to help out their MVP? That's next.